keeping track of it was great because I got to write it down and I loved adding it up at the end of the year and I kept building. Oh, I ran 1,000 miles this year. I wonder if I could do 1,200 next year. I wonder if the year after I could do 1,500. I got all the way up to 4,500 miles in a year.
Wow.
So I just kept adding. And because I added it so incrementally, the load never became too much. And so never had problems with my knees. I've run 55,000 miles in my lifetime. I started running these marathons and I was like, oh, I wonder if I could go faster. Then I trained differently. And so it was like always this, I wonder if.
You're listening to the Plant-Based Eating for Health podcast show. I'm your host, Kathleen Gage. We're here to plant seeds on compassion to animals, your health, and the environment, and topics related to business that align with all three of those areas. Enjoy the show. Well, I have to say today I am so excited to invite my guest onto the show, Joe Gagnon. Joe is actually an extreme athlete. He's an extreme person, and I'm gonna read a bit of his bio, and then we're gonna just get into a conversation about how we get out of our comfort zone and how we live fully and intentionally. Because he has a new book that's all about living with intention, and we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the way that we nurture our body, mind, spirit, all of that, and living the intention of not harming other sentient beings. So with that, Joe Gagnon is driven by a simple mission, helping people realize they are capable of far more than they think is possible. Over the years, he has led 6 companies as CEO, coached elite performers, and pushed himself to physical and mental extremes, completing, get this, 6 Ironman races, running 100-mile ultramarathons, and finishing 6 marathons on 6 continents in 6 days. Okay, so the number is 6. That's pretty amazing. As CEO of Rainmaker, he is building an AI-powered sales platform designed to help small businesses grow smarter and faster. As a high-performance coach, he partners with bold, ambitious leaders to break through self-imposed limits and lead lives of deeper purpose and greater impact. And nowadays, we definitely need that. And, I'm going to frame it with a few things that have happened recently that I've noticed how desperate people are and how depressed people are. And I think with what we're going to talk about today, that Joe will really help us break through some of those limitations. His life's work and new book, Living Intentionally, are both rooted in the belief that growth happens on the edge. It's in the uncomfortable, uncertain, and transformational moments that we discover who we really are. Every step he takes is guided by the principle of grit, grace, and groundedness. Whether he's building a company, mentoring a founder, or speaking on stage, his goal remains the same: to inspire others to live intentionally by design, not by default. Joe, great to have you here.
Thanks, Kathleen. What a pleasure to be with you and your listeners.
Well, thank you. And, I was really impressed when I did a little digging on your background. And as I told you, I was listening to the interview you did with our friend, Robert Cheek. And, Robert is somebody who pushes the limits. And I'd like to know, what would you say in today's world is the greatest challenge people deal with, and how can they overcome that as far as their mind, body, and spirit?
I think, Kathleen, it's different than it was 50 years ago. I think we have to be really honest about that in the world today, where we're constantly bombarded by social media messages, by the negativity of the selfishness of the billionaire populations, by the sort of I'm a capitalist for sure, but I don't think we can only put commercial interests in front of all of the things that are good for us. And I think we're in a battle every day to, get back to the soul of humanity and, into the positivity of what we can create when we work better and lean into, opportunity and community, into our performance mindset. It's all sitting inside of us, but there is so much noise that we don't feel the signal every day. And we are somewhat becoming incapable almost of seeing the signal. And so a lot of the reason why I wrote this book, a lot of the reason I want to be on stage or talk to you, is to remind everyone that that doesn't have to be the way. Like, we don't need to be a victim to the food industry that makes 70% of our foods ultra processed. We don't need to be a victim to this selfishness that the few needed everything, or the way that we're treating each other in our communities and telling everyone else how to live. We should stand up for what we worked for the past 2,000 years, to create equity, to create reasoned people, to have justice and morals and ethics. This serves all of us, right? And then that allows us, when we take the noise away, allows us to lean into, the deep level of possibility and potential that we have. And that's what I found over the past 25 years myself. I was trapped in the first half of my life by what I thought I was supposed to do because it's what everyone told me I should do. White collar world, wear a tie, make a lot of money, sort of sell your soul to that lifestyle. And I fell into that. And, as I wrote about in the book, I said I was climbing the ladder, but against the wrong wall.
Right.
And I had to step back down and reset. And I think we all need a bit of a reset. And then once we reset, then we can unlock, and then it really changes.
Well, I know that you talk about that point you hit where you were very, very successful. You are very, very successful, but at that point, it was really about, like you said, the corporate environment, bigger, better, more. And I've been guilty of that myself. I actually years ago I was on a path that was very self-destructive, straightened out my life in my late 20s, and then it was all about success. How much could I acquire? And I think we hit a point where we go, is this all there is? I mean, we've accomplished it. People look at you and they go, wow, look at all you've accomplished. And yet you hit a wall of really complacency and like, is this all there is? Tell us about that.
Mm. Yeah. Oh my gosh. It's when you're in the moment, I don't, and this is for any of the listeners, I don't think it's so clear then. It's clear looking back for sure what happened and the escape that I took, but I didn't like the feeling of that this was going to be the future. It
Mm,
was not inspiring to me that the only thing I could focus on was making more money. And I don't know if I could work more than 70 or 80 hours in a week. I was running out of time. I found that the systems I tried to enter into, like my family, I couldn't laugh. I lost my sense of humor, and they'd be having fun, and I felt isolated. I tried to exercise and I couldn't run a mile. I couldn't fit in. I lost an arm wrestling match. It was one of those moments of like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this. And I never really felt that great. And so I was like, all of the other areas where I should have sort of, some synergy and some positivity coming wasn't happening. And
hmm
so I stepped back and said, okay, maybe I should just try something. And, what I did was I made this bold pronouncement to myself that I was going to write down what I was doing 3 days a week. I was going to try and exercise. And I created this spreadsheet because I needed some form of accountability because I felt sort of pretty incapable of doing anything like that. And as I started to write it down, like this little switch went off in my head, and I started reading what I was doing. And I was like, oh, wow, look what I'm accomplishing more and different from what I was doing just with work. Because only so many times you could talk about, oh, I made $1 million this year. Like, so what? Like, what's next? And and so then as that started to click in, I had an opportunity to leave the big job and took an 80% pay cut. And I went to a small startup. And then the energy system really started to change. I was no longer trapped in this big system where I had to behave a certain way,
hmm
starting to get my activity level moving. I hadn't yet fixed the diet and the alcohol problem, which I did a few years later because that got in the way of my performance.
Right.
So I had to fix that. But I started having just these little signals of positive feeling like, oh, wow, I really like that. I should do that more. And so I just kept adding to the list. Oh, why don't I try this? Got curious. I felt like a kid again. Like, I wonder if I could do that. And every time I did it, it worked. Whether that was, writing a blog that I started or it was running a different kind of race. Like I was never a good swimmer. And I said, oh, I should try a triathlon. Like, how could that be? And I felt like I was learning and growing. And just all of a sudden, I probably would say that there are, all of my neuromodulators started working better. I
Hmm.
was unlocking them. And in the beginning, I never told anyone what I was doing because I was just sort of trying to fix myself. And but then I started finding community people supportive. I mean, I could stop because I could keep going on, but really at the end of the day, it was about, I always like to say it was one push-up and 1 mile and one paragraph. Was not big expectations in the beginning, but it was about the reset that was going to sort of create a new foundation for me going forward.
And I love that you said you hadn't quite gotten your food and your alcohol in order yet. I've got 43 years of sobriety. It's like my last drink was in 1983, and
Amazing.
it didn't work for me. And it's funny because I was at a store recently and they were giving out samples of wine, and I said to the woman, "No, I'll pass." And she said, "Oh, it's really good." And I said, "No, it makes me fall down." And then we had a great conversation about people who have a problem with alcohol, but that was a big point for me. And then my food was another one, but I didn't give up the animal-based products until I was 64 years old, and that was
Mm.
7 years ago. And that was a game changer. I would say the two biggest changes I've ever made in my life were the change of giving up alcohol, just letting it go, and the drugs, and then also the animal-based products. And you mentioned about ultra-processed foods, and I'd really like to dig into how that is killing our society. It's killing our kids. There's more diseases that are preventable than ever before. What can you say to those people
Mm.
who they say, Joe, it's easy for you, Kathleen, it's easy for you. You don't get it. I've got X, Y, and Z working against me. What can people do to, one, have that awareness and that awakening, if you will, so that they can live more intentionally?
I think it's such a good question, Kathleen. I have this conversation, I have this privilege that my dad's still alive. He's 95 years old. And so we
That is a privilege.
talk a lot about this idea of how could you describe to someone what you feel? Like, oh, I
Hmm.
feel great. And someone's like, what does that mean? I don't know what that means. I don't know. I don't feel great. And so I've worked hard to sort of answer this question. And what I think is a couple things. First, we have to go back to how you create intention in your life is to define your why. You need purpose. Once we do that, we can stack on that change. But without a why, we are then subject to everyone else's opinion, every marketing message that we hear, because we have no reason to doubt it. And so we just adopt what someone else says. But if you have a why, a strong why, so maybe it's taking care of my kids, maybe it's showing up in my community, at a food pantry. Maybe my why is about becoming a mentor or a coach, like whatever we decide, then all the architecture of life needs to fit behind that. Because if you're going to show up, imagine if you said you wanted to be a mentor to people, then you would probably need to be good at what you do, right? You'd have to have taking care of yourself, be operating at a higher level of performance, feeling better about life, because now you have a different level of responsibility. And so, first is always, embrace the definition of why and define it. Build your pillars. That's this grit, grace, and groundedness. But beyond that, it's about these 5 core pillars. Are you sleeping well? Are you eating well? Are you exercising? How's your mindset? And how are you doing in your community? Very actionable
Hmm.
steps that one can take to improve. And once you start any progress on these points, our entire body chemistry and mind and body start to change how they operate. And so we all have gotten used to feeling bad. Like this is what ultra processed foods do. This is what alcohol does. It makes us feel bad, and then we accept that's how we feel. And so it's not how we need to or should feel. And so as we think about, like, do you want to feel lethargic with low energy? Do you want to be sick all the time? Do you want to not be able to go in the backyard and play with your kids? I don't think anyone wants any of these outcomes.
Right.
They're like, but this is life. And I'm like, no, it isn't life. This is the way life is evolved. It doesn't how we have to evolve. We can evolve through the choices that we make, which is the same thing that happened to me. So in the beginning, as I started to do all that exercise, the first thing was the alcohol to go because I couldn't perform well when I had a hangover
Yeah.
or had all this
Amazing how that works.
or had all this poison in me. And I was like, oh, I want to go faster on the bike. stop drinking beer, and all of a sudden my system is working better.
Right.
You don't
Right.
believe it. It's the same kind of thing with dairy. It's like, in Switch for Good, Dotsie always says, it's the one food item, forget meat, of course we shouldn't eat it, but this is the one that you could feel the difference the next day.
Right.
Like if you eliminate dairy, you can feel better in a day. So it's instant. The same with alcohol. And then ultra processed foods, our biome works better, right? We will actually, in the TMI category, your entire digestive system will work better. You will sleep better. You won't struggle to stay awake in the middle of the day looking for other supplements to keep us going because these things are getting in the way of our biochemistry working properly. And so it doesn't mean every meal, like you can have a vegan ice cream, you can have, a Cliff Bar, you can have stuff, whatever, a
Right.
chocolate bar if you want sometimes, but it just can't be all the time. Like this isn't about some monastic approach. It's about removing the things that aren't good for us, that help us improve and perform better. And I promise you, once you start to perform a little better, you then become very greedy and you're like, I want to perform even better.
Right.
And you make another change and you create another pillar and another change. And that's so mine went from I stopped having alcohol. And then my meat to no meat journey was, I stopped with the beef and I stopped the chicken, the turkey, and the pork. And then the fish was the last thing. It took me about 7 years of shift. And each time I shifted, I was like, oh, wow, I like this, and it
Right.
got better. The food pyramid in its own way opened up in a different way. It was like, oh, look at all these choices. There's 100 times more plant-based solutions than there are meat solutions. And then of course there's all the other reasons why we could be plant-based, but oh, you will feel better for sure. And that is, amazing. And but if you don't ever try it, you don't know and you sort of accept it, and that's just not okay.
Well, and it's interesting to get people to believe that that's actually possible and so quickly because when I quit in 2018, I did it for health reasons. I was experiencing inflammation and I was considerably heavier than I am now. And I had lost both my parents. So you are very blessed to have your dad. And very close to my mom and dad. So it wasn't like one of those insignificant losses that I hear some people talk about. No, no, this was a huge loss. And I I knew I couldn't stuff with smoking. I couldn't stuff with alcohol. I couldn't stuff with drugs. So food was my drug of choice.
Mm.
And I had resigned myself to the fact, well, at my age, this is what women experience.
Yeah.
I bought into the propaganda. And then one day, I started doing some research and came across, of course, the usual Eat to Live, Dr. Joel Furman and, Rip Esselstyn and
Yeah.
Dr. Campbell. And I started just consuming all this information. And I realized I had more control than I had given myself. And I read stuff that within a few days you're going to notice a marked difference. And I thought, okay, I'm going to give myself 7 days. And if I don't feel a substantial change in 7 days, that's it. I'm going back to the way I was eating. I was looking for my out. And
Yeah.
what's amazing, within 2 days, I felt incredible. And the
Mm.
first week I dropped some weight without even trying. And then the second week and the third, and I dropped something like nearly 40 pounds within about
Wow.
a 3 month period. And I'm like, okay. And I had more energy. I didn't have the inflammation. How do you convince somebody that,
Mm.
or how can you give somebody the opportunity to consider that in just a few days, if they make a few simple changes, that they're going to experience a feeling they haven't experienced in a while? What would you say to somebody?
We have to accept that the way the human body works is under our control, right? So, and then
Hmm.
what we put into it is what it becomes. It's
Right.
that simple. Dr. B says we're going to eat 88,000 pounds of food in our lifetime. And if you don't think that makes a difference, then you should think again.
Right.
If you think about your car, do you want to put junky gas in there and ruin the engine? Probably not, because you don't want to invest in another car. If you thought about reading really bad information into your head, how are you going to feel? And it's the same with food. And so we recreate ourselves. Even though this doesn't show, between every 90 and 120 days, we will regenerate all the cells in our body. And there's only two real inputs into that. That's oxygen and nutrition. And so if you want to build the best system possible, Imagine you're an F1 car. What are you going to put in it? You're going to put the best. If you want to be the best, this is pretty simple. You don't even need a big bank account. Like you just need to eat differently. And that is the foundation of what we are. I don't even know how it could be any simpler. So if you say it's okay that I am okay the rest of my life not feeling good, I want to be that way, then I'm not sure what I could tell you. But if you have any inkling that you would like to feel better, perform better, be there for your kids, for your family, for your work, for your community,
Right.
then you need to build yourself slightly differently on the way to significantly differently and just start with one day, start with 2 days, and start to replace because this nutrition is the same like why would smoking be so bad? Like that's replacing oxygen with smoke. Who would want to
Right.
walk in a fire and breathe in all the smoke? We know that won't make us feel good. So this is what I learned, right? This really matters. It's not like a rounding error. This is what you are. You are what you eat. Then the second would be who you hang out with. You know, are you hanging out with positive people? You hanging out with negative people? How do you feel? Like I know certainly that the my career and my life got better because I hung out with really smart people. And you might say, well, I don't know anyone. I'll say, you know what? Turn on YouTube and find the most inspirational philosopher or find really creative people. Start hanging out virtually with the role models that you would like to be around. Like start to put positivity into you. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, that's my influence, not this thing over here.
Right.
People dragging me down because they want to feel bad. I don't want to. So in the beginning, to be honest, Kathleen, I was fine somewhat isolating myself from the world I was living in because I knew this. I wanted to live the life I wanted to live, not the life someone else decided for me, because that's the way I could show up best for me, my family, and for all other obligations I was going to put myself in because I cared about me. Like, why do I
Right.
want to be a bad actor on this life stage? Okay, so it took me 25 years to get to this level, but like, I don't know what else I would have done with that time,
Yeah.
sit and watch Netflix, like, so I think that we just have to not like with this where the ultra processed foods hurt is because we actually are not connecting the damage they're doing with us taking them. And so we just think they're food because they're calories.
Right.
But that's not the case. That is not the case. The case is that they have been changed from their initial design, where what grows out of the earth is amazing, to be processed with chemicals and most of the nutrients taken out. And so, how do you build a good system? I wrote about it in the book. The F1 car. Who's ever going to have an F1 car? But we've heard about this thing, and it goes faster than anything else. They put so much work into making that system work perfectly. They can perform better than any other car. But it's mostly because they're working with the design. It's the fuel, it's the tires, it's the people, it's how it drives. It's like all these things. Like you could do that with your life. You really can. You have agency. You just have to use it.
Well, let me ask you this. With the well, first of all, Dr. B, author of Fiber Fuel, and Rip, they did a interview together. I think Rip was interviewing Dr. B, and they both had the same T-shirt on. I have big poops, and I thought, oh, you go. Little
Yep.
bold, but it's true. It's like a lot of people, they don't have that experience for days on end. But with that being said, when you decided to do the 6 marathons in 6 days on 6 continents, let's take a step back because
Mm,
you actually had a point in your life where you couldn't run a mile.
right.
And so let's talk about that journey of you couldn't run a mile, then you're running marathons. Now, I've done 2 marathons in my life, and my claim to fame, my first was at 61. My claim to fame is I always come in last. I mean, that's my claim to fame. But, it was like I wanted to do it, and I realized I needed better training. So that would definitely be part of the protocol is get the training that you need. But with that being said, how did you go from not able to run a mile? You were successful on so many levels, but on that level, definitely not. And now you're just an elite athlete. What was the process there and the mindset with that?
Is this incremental growth really over time? I have a lot of patience, and I had this theory of like have the courage to make a commitment to consistency because first you have to have courage, which is a really important attribute of human potential. Commitment is this idea that you've decided deeply about what you're setting out to do and you're going to stay true to that. And consistency is where mastery happens. I was like intently curious. I was like, I wonder what it's going to feel like. I want to go see that. It's like this, you sometimes you say, I want to go see a movie because I want to know what it's like, or I want to go see this place, or I like to feel life. And so this is one way to feel life. Keeping track of it was great because I got to write it down and I loved adding it up at the end of the year and I kept building. Oh, I ran 1,000 miles this year. I wonder if I could do 1,200 next year. I wonder if the year after I could do 1,500. I got all the way up to 4,500 miles in a year.
Wow.
So I just kept adding. And because I added it so incrementally, the load never became too much. And so never had problems with my knees. I've run 55,000 miles in my lifetime. I started running these marathons and I was like, oh, I wonder if I could go faster. Then I trained differently. And so it was like always this, I wonder if. And then, you know, the way the six continent marathon challenge came up was, I had also traveled a lot in work, a lot around the world, 45 countries, 6 million miles of flying.
Mm.
I've been a lot of places a lot of times. So I'm good at flying, I'm good at running. I'm like, I'm not going to probably climb Mount Everest, but I'd love to do something that is just on so far at the edge of my comfort zone. I wonder if I can create this. So I said, I'm going to try and create this challenge. And I thought of a lot of things. I thought, could I row across the Atlantic? Could I swim across the English Channel? Could I run across America? I came when and we tried all the ideas of other what people have done. And I thought about my travels and my running. And I'm like, what if I tried to link together all of these different places I love going to? So Australia and Singapore and South Africa, and then up to the UK, and then South America and Brazil, and
Mm.
then back to the US. And I figured out I could actually fly these things and I could get a friend to pick me up at the airport and I could go there and run this marathon. But at the end of the day, it was about this, what am I really capable of? Can I pull this off? And if I can, wow, wouldn't that be incredible? Like you would believe in yourself in a way that you never could. Like this is so far beyond anything, Kathleen, I could ever have imagined doing. Like, come on, let's be serious. When I graduated college, you think I thought any of this was going to happen? No possible way. Like, I grew up lower to middle income. We had family. That was it. I was in the Bronx going to school. I was like chased by muggers kind of thing, right? So to find
That
myself,
was when you ran fast, when you were being chased.
right. So to find myself where I was on the Today Show and I'm being interviewed and people are like, my God, what are you setting out to do? And I'm like, I don't know. But here was my message to myself. The lows will be the highs. And this
Mm.
is about reframing. I went in looking for how bad could I feel? I desperately wanted to feel terrible. I wanted to know, like, oh, can you pull yourself out of this hole, kid? What are you worth? Can you do that for yourself? Like, how strong are you? That was what I was seeking. Because this is power, like power over ourselves, right? All the noise of this world telling us what not to do, what to do, all of that. And imagine if you could overcome anything, then what would you be able to stand up in front of for the rest of your life with confidence, right? This was my breakthrough opportunity. And when I finished, and the cameras were there because the news was there. And I was like reflecting a little bit, not only was it not about me, this was about everyone else.
Hmm.
Not only was this, there were no lows, it was only highs. Now that didn't mean it didn't hurt. I didn't sleep but 12 hours the whole week. I didn't lay down once for 6 days. I was in coach one time in the middle seat. Like I took on the biggest burden you could. But my mindset put me in a place that I was actually going to find out what it felt like and come back out. And I came back out safe and I came back out enlightened and self-actualization was happening. And then the most interesting part about this was I started to realize that I actually sort of belong here. I fit. I'm
Right.
worth. I'm not this kid who got bullied and taken advantage of. I wasn't the person who had no chance of success in the future. I went and found myself and showed myself what I was capable of. And I'm not saying everyone has to do that,
Right.
but
Right.
there is this opportunity for us to frame how we want to think about who we are and how we show up. And so, yes, I had built a lot of practice to get there. but the experience was extraordinary and it was just amazing.
And I have a question around all of that for people today. But before we do, I want to know where people can find you, Joe. What's the best web address for them to go to?
Yeah, I have a website that's thehighperformancelife.net. It's all one word, thehighperformancelife.net. You can find me on Substack with my blog every day, which is Joe Curious Substack. It's an interesting place where you can just subscribe to a newsletter. Um, and then, if you're on there, you could email me. But if anyone really
Perfect.
wants, oh, and then on Instagram, it's the High Performance Life on Instagram.
Okay.
And then
And
lastly, we could always hand out my email address if someone really wants to talk to me.
we'll put that in the show notes so that people
Perfect.
have it. And the question I have, because I'm in my 70s and I'm pretty healthy. I'm actually very healthy. I had a wellness check the other day. They did a remote one, and the nurse practitioner is asking me all these questions, and I'm like, are those like questions people really answer? And like, do you take more than 5 medications? I don't take any.
Yeah.
And I don't say this arrogantly. I say it because I've made lifestyle changes. But she said that since COVID, the amount of depression that people deal with is off the charts. And she said, do you use a walker? Do you use this? And on and on and on. And again, no judgment, but it's like I've worked hard to be a healthy person, and I work on gratitude. I do, all the stuff that I need to do for me, because I can certainly go to the other extreme if I choose to make bad choices. But I'm curious for people that are, especially as we get older. I've been looking at ways to minimize my risk of dementia and Alzheimer's and heart disease and type 2 diabetes and all that. And from what I'm trying to think of the expert I've been following who's really focused on the whole dementia topic, that it is considered preventable. They're finding
Mm.
that this is absolutely preventable. And so I've been doing creatine or creatin, as some people call it. I've been doing my power drinks in the morning with protein, plant-based protein and chia seeds, flax seeds, all that. What can people do that, I I feel like it's so important that people just hear that there is a solution. They don't, and you've said it several times in our conversation together, but I really want to simplify it to a point of when somebody hits the 60s and 70s and moving into 80s, it's like you can live a very vibrant life.
Yeah.
What would be the first change that if you had to give them one? Is it giving up animal products? Is it starting the exercise? Is it meditation? Is it journaling? Because you said that you wrote down your goals and you wrote down what you were doing. What can people do? Because I feel so bad for the people that they don't know what they don't know.
Yeah. I think that this is a hard question, not because you or I can't give an answer. It's that each person is somewhat individual. So my sort of general answer to everyone is if you could dedicate 1 hour a day just to yourself every day, you would improve your life because you
Hmm.
would figure out what are you going to do in that hour. I might eat better in that hour. I might exercise. I might read. I might meditate. I might walk. I might call my friends. I might like if you were really thinking about yourself in that hour, how do I make my life better? In the beginning, you're going to sit there and say, I don't know. Am I watching? And it's not like watching Netflix. That's not how you want to take the hour for yourself. And so it's the beginning of the mindset breakthrough, right? There's this unlock that has to happen, a reset of sorts, which says that I have agency and control over my life. I have allowed the world, especially females who are caregivers, who gave up themselves for everyone else in this world, need to show up for themselves. That is not selfish. That's empowerment. That's to make everyone else's life better. And so we have to go back to thinking about if we want to serve the world, our family, or anything else, we have to make ourselves better. And it starts with time. Time is our currency. How we spend our time really matters. And so I think that all the elements you talked about, they're the 5 pillars in my book. It's about exercise. We should do something movement every day. Our mindset, we have to have a positive mindset. If we don't know how to do that, I'm telling you, there's easy ways to find happy people, smart people on YouTube that you could just listen to. Start doing that, right? The community, show up in your community, be part of it, hang out with people who are doing the things you want to do. You'll learn from them. Sleep really matters. I don't think we have to sleep 10 hours, but we need to sleep well every day. And then our nutrition. And back to that, like you can't run a machine if it isn't well taken care of. And so, but all of those elements can fit into like, how do I think about that hour? Breath work, Kathleen, 4 deep breaths. Just just type in box breathing into Google. And in 2 minutes, you'll reset your nervous system and feel
Absolutely.
better. Like start your 1 hour that you're going to do tomorrow with box breathing, and all of a sudden you can be like, whoa, where am I? Like,
Explain box breathing because before we started our conversation, I had to go out. We have rescue horses and chickens and all that, and a small privately funded sanctuary that is not open to the public. But I went out to give the horses their afternoon treats, and as I was filling their water, I was actually doing 4 breaths in,
yeah,
6 out, 4 in, 6 out, and I just stood there with the hose and just like did that breathing, and it was delightful. So, what is box breathing?
yeah, box breathing is this sort of sequence of inhale, exhale in a deliberate fashion. So we're not going fast. We're taking a very deep breath in. We hold it like the one side of the box, and then we breathe
Ah,
out.
okay.
We're to the other side of the box, and we breathe in, down, and then out again. And if we do that 4 times, 6 times, it literally resets our autonomic nervous system, right? This is one of the things that we think we're sort of like just running, but we can actually interrupt our system. So that resets, it almost can push down cortisol, which is the stress hormone, and we start to feel much more present. I mean, sports players, astronauts, pilots, I mean, high performers use breath work as a mechanism for high performance.
Right.
So we start with a little bit of breath work. We committed to our intention of what we wanted to do. Like, hold yourself to it. Say, write down what you want to do. Maybe an hour is too much. How about 15 minutes? We start with box breathing. We write down what we want to do for 15 minutes about us, right? And optimizing on us. And then we have success. And then we do it the next day because this is our commitment to ourselves to improve by committing to ourselves. Who are we committing to? Us.
Right.
Like serve ourselves. We will show up so much better in our lives for everyone else if we do that. Because the other way around, what we are is we're fussy, and no one really wants fussy around. So you do this, and then maybe week one, it was just 15 minutes a day. And week two, what if you went to 25 minutes? And by week eight, maybe it is an hour a day. And now, yeah, you still got 23 other hours, some sleep, some other stuff. You could like, there's a lot of time you still have. And then I would do this assessment. I really believe that assess what you do in there's 168 hours in a week, 24 by 7. Keep track for 1 week of what you did for all 168
Hmm.
hours. And at the end of the week, sit with it by yourself, maybe outside in a beautiful environment and say, am I happy with how I spent my time? Is this the person I want to be? And that assessment, if you really look at yourself in the mirror, will really deeply change how you think about going forward. Because you'll be like, oof, maybe not. I've done this in workshops over and over again, Kathleen, and it's a rare person who comes away and says, I can't improve. The currency of life is time. The fuel of life is our nutrition.
Right.
The spirit of life is the community that we're part of, and our mindset is what holds it all together.
I
We
love
are
it.
powerful machines that we need to use. It's why I lean so hard into human potential. I didn't know that, but I've lived it and I've earned it. It's why I'm so confident about it.
I love it. I think that whole idea of writing down what you did with your whole week, I think will be quite a revelation to people because many are going to find out that they spend an awful lot of time on social media arguing with people that aren't even people, they're bots. And, it's like, it's crazy what's going on. But what is your next now that you've done 6 marathons in 6 days in 6 continents, you've done ultra marathons, you've done triathlon. What else is there for you? What's
Oh
coming up?
gosh. Yeah, I am not done, Kathleen, by any stretch. Okay, so I am still building goals all the time. My favorite one last year in December, I did 2,000 pull-ups in 11 hours and 40 minutes. So
Wow.
yeah, if you think about doing one, right? And so I worked hard on that. I'm going to try to get by the end of the year closer to 4,000 in 24 hours. In 3 weeks, I don't know when this will come out, but let's say July 7th, I'm running what's considered the toughest foot race in the world, which is the Badwater 135. So we run from Death Valley, 135 miles across three mountain passes and up halfway up Mount Whitney. It starts off typically at about 125 degrees. So I've been training, heat training, sauna training, running with my turtlenecks in 90 degrees. So that's the second big goal for this year. And the third is to release the book on August 4th and then get out in the world and explain to people that living intentionally is the unlock. This is where you start to become the person you want to be.
I
And
love it. I
and
love
I
it.
am committed. Kathleen, I am here for one reason and one reason only, to serve other people who want to reach their potential, want to touch it, want to feel it, want to know what it feels like to feel this good, like you feel, like I do. We're not privileged. We just decided
Right.
mindset to unlock the potential that we have. And so I'm going to keep showing the world that age or time is not in the way. Yes, there'll be a time when we depart the planet. I don't think about that at all. I know that I'm living today fully present, leaning into tomorrow in a way that makes every day like vacation day.
I really love that because I know that you at one point in your life did not live with that intentionality. You had goals and all that, but it was all around it from, what I gathered on my research of you and what you shared today is that you had goals around success and money and, the power that comes with that. But the reality is that we hit this point where there's an awakening we have that we realize that we are here to serve. We are here to make a difference. And I just feel so blessed to have had you available today to have this conversation. And in closing, what are your final thoughts for people? What can you leave people with that you feel is such an important message for them to have?
Yeah, I believe in every one of you. I believe in the power that you have inside you, deeply enough that it could almost make me cry because I think that, I just want you to have the life you want to have, and you can. Give yourself a little bit of time, a little bit of grace. You know, Grit is good. It's okay to embrace the suffering. It's not bad. The discomfort is where growth happens. Be curious about where the edges are. Find a supportive community and know that there are people like me and Kathleen who are here to support you and champion you to be the best version of yourself.
That's wonderful. Joe, thank you so much. I want to remind people you've been listening to the Plant Based Eating for Health podcast show. I'm your host, Kathleen Gage, and I've been talking with Joe Gagnon. And Joe's book will be available on Amazon. Am I
On
correct?
August 4th, yes.
Okay, on August 4th, and this will be out before August 4th. So please, go and pre-order the book. Do what you have to do. This guy can make a difference in your life because, Joe, you've made a difference in mine, and I want to thank you for your time today. And I want to encourage people, go out, live fully, and really live with intention. Have a great day.
Thank you.
You've been listening to the Plant Based Eating for Health podcast show. I'm your host, Kathleen Gage, inviting you to subscribe to this channel wherever you're listening or watching the show. And please let your friends know about the Plant Based Eating for Health podcast show. Live healthy.